Hey everybody, how's it going? So in this video, I want to talk about the prince of the host. So in Daniel 9:25-26, it says that the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the hallowed thing. So those of you that have been with me for a long time, you already know that these other events have happened. So just go to the PDF of my ebook here. And we'll go to the final chart of recent fulfillments. And you can see that Daniel 9:25, from the going forth of the commandment to restore Jerusalem in 1947 until Messiah the Prince shall be 7 plus 7 and 62 feasts of weeks. So we have we have the decree right here in 1947 to make Israel a nation. 7 plus 7 years later, Obama born, and 62 feasts of weeks or Shavuots later was the first year of Obama's presidency in 2009. And after 62 Shavuots, or Shabua, which is what that word is, Messiah will cut a covenant, but not for himself. So after the 62 Shavuots, Obama won the Peace Prize for confirming the United Nations Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. It's a worldwide treaty. Okay. But here's the question. It says, after this, Messiah cuts a covenant. Okay, he won the Peace Prize after the 62 Shavuots for agreeing and confirming that UN treaty. Which, by the way, we now know the United Nations is the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. So he's basically confirming a treaty with the beast. Okay. Then the people of the prince that shall come will destroy the city and the hallowed thing. Okay, what is the city and the hallowed thing? We know that it's New York, at least in the context of the recent fulfillments. We know that it's New York City and the One World Trade Center because Daniel 12:11 tells us that from the time that the position shall be taken oath and the idol that makes terror set up, there shall be 1290 days. So the oath was taken right here on January 20th, and 1290 days after that, the steel beam that Obama signed was placed in the One World Trade Center. So literally from the time that the position was taken oath until the idol of terror was set up or placed in the hallowed fortress, as it says in either Daniel 8 or Daniel 11, I can't remember which one. The point is, we know that's a 1290-day period, and that happened as well. So according to these fulfillments that have recently happened, within that context, it appears that New York City and the One World Trade Center is the city and the hallowed thing. So the question is, who is the prince that shall come? Right here. Who is that? Because that is the person who is transgressing the laws. So it tells us that here in Daniel 8. It's talking about the goat and the 4 horns that were on the goat. And it says one of them came out a little horn, and it, or he, magnified himself to the prince of the army, and by it the position was made rotten, and the place of the hallowed part was cast down. Well, this can also read, and the hallowed part of the place was cast down by reason of transgression. So we know that we're talking about New York City and the One World Trade Center right here when it says, From the time that the position shall be taken oath, and the idol that maketh terror, shall be 1290 days. We saw that happen. And by the little horn, that position was made rotten, and the hallowed part of the place was cast down. Okay. And that will last 2300 days. That transgression will last 2300 days. So that's why on this chart right here, I just kind of plugged in 2300 days. We don't know that it starts on January 20th, but because so many other things started on January 20th, the 1290 days started on January 20th. So, and that is associated. So it's the same word right here. It's the continual employment. In other words, in modern times, we'd call that your job or your position. So it's telling us right here that that position was made rotten by who? The little horn, okay, by reason of transgression. So the little horn is what is behind the transgression wherever this is taking place. Well, we know we're talking about the United States here. We're talking about the position of the President of the United States. We know that from the fulfillment itself. So the city in the hallowed thing is New York City and the One World Trade Center. We know that from right here because of this time period, this 1290-day period that occurred between the oath of that position and the idol of terror that was set up in the One World Trade Center. So this transgression will last for 2300 days. Because it's telling us right here that that position will be taken oath. And from that time until the idol is set up, there will be 1290 days. So could this be the same thing? It's talking again about that position and the hallowed part of the place, which was that steel beam placed in the One World Trade Center. There's another verse that actually says fortress, hallowed part of the fortress. But the 2300 days seems to come after the oath is taken. But we don't know that for sure, but it could be. Well, if you add 2300 days from January 20th, 2009, you end up with May 15th, 2015. We're not going to know until we get there. But that's just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind, because there might be something that occurs in May of 2015. So what I'm trying to figure out here is, who is this little horn? Because right here, it seems to be someone different from this right here. So this is referred to as Messiah, the Prince. This right here is referred to as the people of the Prince that shall come. That is the little horn. Okay, but in order to find out who the little horn is, we have to dig a little bit deeper. So in Daniel 8, it says there is this goat that doesn't touch the ground. And on the goat, there was this big horn, and the horn broke into turned into four horns. And out of those four horns came forth a little horn. Okay. We know that the fulfillments of these texts are occurring over and over again. So it tells us that, for example, the ram in Daniel 8 was Media and Persia. Then it tells us that the goat is Greece, the king of Greece. So what happened originally is that Alexander the Great partially fulfilled this description of the goat and the leopard, because you can see that Daniel 2, Daniel 7, and Daniel 8 all parallel each other. So Alexander the Great, his kingdom broke up into four sections. So that's the four horns and the four heads. So I'm just going to go to another chart because I don't want to confuse you. We'll just go to this other chart, and we'll go to this one right here. We'll just shrink it down a little bit. Okay, so there were 4 stages of the beast. That's what basically what Daniel 2, Daniel 7, and Daniel 8 are talking about. So first there's the Babylonian Empire, that was the lion with wings, the head of gold. Then we had the Persian Empire come up right after that. Cyrus the Great subdued 3 kingdoms, these 3 kingdoms right here, in order to build that Persian Empire. Then after that we had the Greek Empire under Alexander the Great, including the Hellenistic period that his empire was broken into. It was broken into these 4 sections. And these are considered this is considered the Hellenistic period. So this corresponds to the leopard and also the goat. The leopard in Daniel 7 and the goat in Daniel 8. Then we're told that the 4th stage of the beast will be the Roman Empire, the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. The 7 heads, we're told, we're given a riddle about that in the book of Revelation, about how there were 7 heads, and the 7 heads were 7 kings on one level, and 5 have fallen, 1 is, and 1 is not yet come. Okay, so that's reference. Here are the 7 heads it's referring to. The 5 that had the book of Revelation was written by John during the Roman Empire. So that's the head that is, when he says, and 1 is. He's talking about Rome. So 1 is, that's Rome. 5 have fallen. That's the first empire right here, the Babylonian Empire, the second empire, which was the Persian Empire, and then the 4 kingdoms that Alexander's empire was split into. So that is Egypt right here, the Ptolemaic kingdom, the Seleucid Empire right here, the kingdom of Pergamon, which is Turkey, where Turkey is, and also Macedonia, which is Greece right here. So the 4 heads of the leopard are also included in the 7 heads of the final beast. So that's the 4 heads. But remember, the leopard also has 4 wings. We're going to get into that in a minute because that's in the future. So the 5 that had fallen during the Roman Empire, when St. John was talking in the book of Revelation, he says, 1 is, but 5 have fallen. So Babylon, Persia, Egypt, the Seleucid Empire, and the Greek Empire had all fallen. He said, okay, 5 have fallen, 1 is, but 1 has not yet come. Well, the one that hadn't come yet was the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire, because after one of the falls of Rome, the Turkish Empire rose. So that's what that is. That's what that is right there. Okay, but the 7 heads of the leopard. So the 7 heads of the leopard already occurred back here. I'm sorry, the 4 heads of the leopard occurred right here with the breaking up of Alexander's kingdom. But the 4 wings of the leopard have not occurred yet. So when we go back and we look at the parallel scriptures here, you can see that there are 4 heads on the leopard and also 4 wings. I think yeah, here we go. 4 heads and 4 wings right here. So the 4 heads already happened, but the 4 wings haven't happened. The same is true for Daniel 8. So the 4 horns of the goat parallel the 4 heads and the 4 wings of the leopard. But Notice it says the rough goat is the king of Greece, and the great horn is the first king. Okay, so the first king was Alexander the Great, but a lot of people, and I mean I did this myself, assume that that is referring, that means, okay, the first king is Alexander the Great, and then the four next kings were the four kingdoms that they broke up into, which is only part of it. It's not the full story, it's only part of it, because notice that the goat, the four horns of the goat go up to heaven right here. So the goat didn't touch the ground, and the four horns went up toward heaven. So we're talking, and that corresponds to the four wings of the leopard. Okay. Okay, so right here, you have the four wings of the leopard that are coming up in the future. These are the kings that go up toward heaven, meaning they have satellite launching capability, I'm thinking, or they are sending rockets up to the moon. They go up toward heaven. These four horns, quote unquote, of the goat, and also correspond to the wings, the four wings of the leopard. And out of those four comes the little horn, or the little king. Well, these four kings, they also are connected to these 10 kings. So when we look at Daniel 7, it says a fourth beast, and it had, this is the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. It's also mentioned in Revelation 13. A fourth beast had 10 horns, and there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. So this little horn is coming up in the future, basically. It's one of 4 countries that go up toward heaven. And those 4 countries are 4 of 10 countries that the beast is sectioned into. So the beast that has 7 heads and 10 horns, we've talked about that. Presently, or at least in 2009, it was the United Nations, because it came out of the Roman Empire. They're still using the Roman flag. I showed that in my other videos. If you haven't watched those other videos, I recommend watching the first couple of videos that are linked below in the description box, because I show how the United Nations is the beast mentioned in Revelation 13. So there are 4 stages of the beast that Daniel talks about. It ends with the Roman Empire, but then it says that one of the heads will be wounded. That's the Roman Empire, and then it will be healed. And that is the beast that was, is not, yet is. So the beast is changing its form over time, and it changed from the Roman Empire into the United Nations, and that's its present form right now. It's the United Nations. It sits on all 7 continents. So there are actually only 5 countries that are not in league with the United Nations right now. Every other country on the planet is in league with the United Nations. So the United Nations literally sits on all 7 continents of the world. They're stemming out of the Roman Empire. They still use the Roman flag. And in 2009, which, as we can see, was a very, very significant year. 2009 is when, these 7 years started right here. In the context of all the fulfillments we've had so far, His 7 years started right here in 2009 when Obama won the Peace Prize for confirming that treaty with the United Nations, that worldwide nuclear non-proliferation treaty. He won the Peace Prize for that exactly 62 Shavuots after Israel was declared a nation, also by the United Nations. The United Nations are the ones that put forth that decree to make Israel a nation. So 2009 was a really big year. And in that year, the United Nations came out with this developmental report segregating the whole world into 10 regional groupings. So the 7 heads are the 7 continents, and the 10 horns are these 10 regional groupings right here that they were segregated into in 2009. This is the first year of the 7 years that Daniel mentions in Daniel 9. So the 4 kings that go toward heaven are coming out of these 10 sections right here. That's what it appears to be. And out of one of those 4 that go up to heaven, that's our clue. They either have satellite launching capability, or they're sending rockets to the moon, or whatever. I mean, I know Russia and China, and I also know the United States, or I don't know how many others. You can look that up. But the four kingdoms or governments, they have some kind of, they're going up to heaven, so they have some kind of satellite launching capability. They're sending rockets to the moon or something. And out of one of those comes the little horn. So if you want to find out who is behind the transgression of the Constitution in the United States, which I think a lot of people are becoming aware of this in recent years. If you want to know who's really behind that, it tells you right here. It's the little horn that's behind it. But in order to find out who the little horn is, you have to look into all the other clues. So we know that it's one of 4. That's what it's telling us. And that is who will destroy the city and the hallowed thing. So New York City and the One World Trade Center. Okay, so let's look a little deeper into this to find out which one of those 4 countries it is. So it has to be one of those countries that's launching satellites or launching rockets. They've got to be going up to heaven somehow. And it's one of the countries that has signed with the United Nations. So they've signed that nuclear non-proliferation treaty. Okay. So just so you know, everything in green is the countries that have signed with the United Nations. These are the countries in red and orange have not signed. So to find this little horn, the country that is truly behind the transgression of the laws in the United States, in order to find that, it's not one of the countries that is in red. That's number 1. And number 2, it has to have some type of launching capability to go up toward heaven. So either launching rockets or launching satellites. And here's the third thing. The third thing is that we need to go look into the asteroid strike now, because this all ties in, because the beast is going to get its power from that asteroid strike. It's going to rise out of that asteroid strike. When the asteroid hits, that is when the beast is going to really gain its power. And its power is going to last 3.5 years. That's what it tells us in these texts. That's not me saying that. This is the text alone. So we have to go look at the asteroid strike, because that's going to give us more clues about who's transgressing the laws, who's really behind it. We're not talking about the front people here. We know who the front people are. We're trying to find out who's behind the front people, what country it is. Our first clue may be that it's called a little horn. So maybe it's a little country. That's another clue we have. So they're with the United Nations. That's number one. They have satellite launching capability, or they're sending rockets to the moon. And number three, it appears that for some reason it's called a little horn. So maybe it's a small country. So those are our three first clues. Okay, here are our next clues. So I saw a star fall from heaven, and he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. Okay. An asteroid hits the Earth. We've talked about this in my other videos. Again, if you haven't seen those other videos, they're linked below. They're like the first couple of links. I think it says the New World Order will be destroyed by an asteroid, part 1 and part 2. If you haven't seen those, I recommend you go watch those first, because there's a lot of details that I can't go in here. I don't want to take up that much of your time in this video because I've already talked about it. But an asteroid hits the Earth. It opens a pit, a huge pit, and smoke and ash come out of that pit and darken the air and the sky for an entire third portion of the Earth. It says that in another scripture. It's an entire third portion of the Earth that's darkened. So that's our other clue. So in those other videos, we talked about that third portion of the Earth. And we talked about how the texts tell us that the seat of the beast will be in darkness. Well, why is it in darkness? We already know that the asteroid causes the darkness. And it tells us that the darkness covers an entire third portion of the Earth. So if the seat of the beast is in darkness, then the third portion of the Earth that is in darkness from this asteroid strike has to include the seat of the beast. Well, where is the seat of the beast? We know the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns is the United Nations, and the United Nations is headquartered in New York City. So this third portion where the darkness will be from the asteroid strike has to include New York City. So it's either over here in North and South America, or it's over here on this side, and maybe can go all the way to like right here, covering Africa, Europe, and South America. So we don't know. It doesn't tell us that. But we do know that it's over here somewhere. So that means that this final stage of the beast will arise from one of these other countries over here that is not affected by the asteroid. That makes sense. That makes sense. So if we want to know who the little horn is, we know that it rises out of the asteroid. It says the beast shall ascend out of the pit, meaning it's going to gain its power out of that asteroid strike. So it makes sense because we know that if it's going to gain power from the asteroid strike, it must not be affected by the asteroid. If it was going to be affected by the asteroid, it would lose its power, because we know that it tells us right here that out of that smoke there came locusts upon the earth. We're not sure what that is. My thought is it might be helicopters, because if you were John and you were looking at this vision thousands of years ago, you wouldn't know what helicopters were, and you might think they were locusts because they kind of that's just my thought. I know other people have had that thought as well, but we don't really know. But the locusts will torture those people for 5 months. So out of the smoke of the pit there came locusts, and unto them was given power that they should not kill but torment the men that did not have the seal of God in their foreheads. So we know who has the seal of God in their foreheads. That is the 144,000, which also corresponds to the 2 witnesses. I've talked about that in other videos as well. So the 2 witnesses that are on the earth during this time period, because we know it's not the bride leaves and goes to the safe place. It's a huge multitude of people that go to a safe place. They don't go through this. But the 2 witnesses go through this on the earth, but they're sealed So they're not the ones that are going through the torment, but everyone that's not sealed goes through the torment. I know it sounds it's extremely symbolic, but believe me, I mean, I'm looking at this from a non-biased perspective and I'm saying this stuff is happening exactly the way it was written. So even though we might not completely understand it at this point, my educated guess is that it will happen. It just may not play out the way we think it's going to play out. But anyway, that's what it says. But I think the 5 months part is pretty clear. They're going to be tormented for 5 months. This is after the asteroid strike. So we don't know, is there a nuclear event that is going to be caused from this asteroid strike and that's why they're in torment? We don't know. There is another scripture that says that they will have sores on their skin. So that I think ties into that torment. So I think that there's some kind of nuclear event because it talks about the burning. But here's the other point that I wanted to make really quick. There's an army that comes out of the Euphrates of 200 million to slay the third part of the men. So when it says the third part, it's talking about that third portion of the earth that is in darkness after this asteroid strike. So after the asteroid strike, this army comes out of the Euphrates. Well, where is that? That's Iraq. So an army of 200 million will come out of Iraq to kill those people that are living in that area of darkness where the asteroid is going to strike. Believe me, it's not me saying this. This is the text, because I would never in a million years come up with this stuff, okay? This is the text straight up that are saying this, and I think we should take it seriously at this point. Having seen all these events play out exactly the way they were written, I think we should take this seriously. So by these three were the third part of the men killed. By the fire, that may be reference to the nuclear event. I believe it is. It's described in Zechariah very clearly as a nuclear event. It's talking about missiles flying through the air, and he talks about the skin melting off their bodies. It's a nuclear event he's describing. So that is the fire. So how are they going to die? They're going to die. How are the people in this third part of the earth that is affected by this asteroid strike? How will they die? There's three ways right here. By the fire, the nuclear event, by the smoke that comes out of the pit and poisons the air, and by the brimstone that comes from the army that will come out of Iraq. So not only is there going to be an asteroid strike and it's going to, darken the sun and the sky and the air, but there's going to be this army that comes in there and starts killing everybody. But they're not going to kill everyone. It says the rest that were not killed by these plagues, they still didn't repent. Okay. Well, Ezekiel 5 talks about this too. So I just want to go in here. It says, divide the hair. So it says, burn with fire a third part in the midst of the city. Take the other third part and smite about it with a knife, meaning it's war. And the other third part scatter into the wind, and I will draw a sword after them. So they are taken up. Remember, Revelation 12, the woman, which I explain in my other video, Escape from the Serpent. It's linked below. The woman is the multitude of all tribes and nations that will be taken out at the start of this final 3.5-year period. So that's what that's referring to. The hair, it tells us right here, is Jerusalem. So we're dividing the hair, or dividing Jerusalem into three parts. Well, Jerusalem is not literally the city in the Middle East. These texts are more ancient than that city in the Middle East. They really are. It's more ancient than the country in the Middle East. It's not referring to that city, and it's not referring to that country. It's talking about holy Jerusalem that is going to come out of heaven at the end. Right here. So Jerusalem is split into three sections. So if you read my book or if you've watched my other videos, you'll see that I over and over in the text it tells us that there will be two rescues, that one group will go up before the 3.5 years, and that the two witnesses will stay on the earth but ascend at the end. But notice it says right here that a third part of these shall die with the pestilence, and with famine they shall be consumed in the midst of thee. So the pestilence is that nuclear event, and there's also a famine, and there is a war. So we can go back up here and look at this. It says they're killed by the fire and the smoke and also the brimstone, which is that war that comes, the army that comes out of Iraq. Okay, so so if they're dying from famine, I mean, it makes sense that if the asteroid, if the smoke darkens the sky and the darkens the sun for an entire third portion of the earth, then it would make sense that all the plants would die. And then, of course, the animals would start dying too, and then there would be a famine. So it does make sense that there's this famine that will occur along with all of it. It's a truly an apocalyptic event. I mean, would be really horrible. So, I mean, whatever way you look at it, it all fits together. It makes sense, and whether you believe it's really going to happen or not, it is truly a horrible apocalyptic event. It's very bad. And it is possible, and we have indications, like I've said, so many of these things have played out exactly the way they were written so far in just recent years that, that's why I'm on here warning people about this, because I'm thinking, there's this high likelihood now that this really could happen soon. So, so if this region of the earth is suffering, this army comes out of Iraq, is killing everybody. They're in war. They're having famine, and they're in torment for 5 months. It says. Then the likelihood, the beast that will ascend and gain power out of that asteroid strike must be over here somewhere. So like I said, this third portion, it could be this area right here. And so the beast will come out of somewhere over here, or it will come out of somewhere way, way over here. So the little horn comes out of that beast. So if you want to know who's transgressing the laws in the United States, it's somebody over here. It's a country over here. Okay. And I think that is, that's everything I'm going to talk about in this video. And then I'm going to continue this in the next video, and we're going to talk about some other things that have to do with this as well. So for those of you that want to continue, then just watch the next video.